Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I'm going to give you a very specific update on the SolarWinds data breach, which obviously is massive and growing, and there have been more disclosures. I am going to do a full video on the nuts and bolts, updating my one from December 16th, because we have a ton of new information out from a lot of different organizations. But I want to focus on one specific problem that we have here, and that is the blame game that is starting to happen when we are looking at this. People are starting to point fingers. That is not good, especially as we are going through a massive worldwide remediation thanks to SolarWinds. Now, this is coming from multiple articles I've been reading and compiling for that huge video / podcast I'm going to do probably in a day or two. This also includes my own thoughts as well as people I've talked to. But I think Axios actually put out a pretty good article kind of with this primer, and so I'm cribbing from them as well. But first, as I've mentioned, I'm going to be doing this article, and we unfortunately have to start with President Trump and what he posted on Twitter on Saturday, because this is kind of what is kicking this off. And again, I believe cybersecurity is agnostic to politics, even though we are not immune from it. But in the middle of a data breach, stuff like this is difficult to read, especially when we have a lot of problems and bigger fish to fry. So, to quote President Trump's tweet, and this is the direct verbatim quote, "The cyber hack is far greater in the fake news media than in actuality. I have been fully briefed and everything is well under control. Russia, Russia, Russia is the priority chant when anything happens because lamestream is, for mostly financial reasons, petrified of discussing the possibility that it may be China. It may. There could also have been a hit on our ridiculous voting machines during the election, which is now obvious that I won big, making it an even more corrupted embarrassment for the USA." Now, I disagree with this tweet on multiple points here. The President Trump's reluctance to basically name and, quite frankly, shame Russia for the SolarWinds cyber attack is going to hamper companies and countries, government agencies, essentially as they begin assessing the damage, remediating the situation, and repairing and recovering from this. Now, experts worldwide, in and out of the United States, remember, this affects everybody around the world, countries and companies outside of the United States as well. The experts are all agreeing that this is the work of Russian intelligence. And I will tell you this, I personally spoke with cybersecurity personnel closer to ground zero than I am right here, and we discussed some of the indicators of compromise that point to Russian intelligence. And given the intimate knowledge that we had discussed, I actually agree, and I am on board with that assessment. It does indeed look like they are to blame for this. So, with overwhelming evidence pointing there, all of the experts pointing in the same direction, independently of each other, mind you, as well, because we're all looking at this from different angles, we really have to understand where blame needs to go. Now, here's a timeline of this, according to basically multiple sources here that I'm going to name, but the White House is what we're talking about here, because their timeline of response, I think, is at the heart of this situation. Now, White House officials had readied a statement this past Friday calling Russia, quote, the main actor in this attack, but they were ordered not to release it, according to the Associated Press. Now, around the same time, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in an interview that Russia is pretty clearly, quote unquote, behind this attack. This also hit the State Department. Obviously, that is what he runs, not to mention other agencies, etc., etc. Now, Saturday, President Trump tweeted essentially that the extent of this attack was being overplayed by the media and that this could possibly be China and all of that. That is the quote that I started this with, and that's where we're at. And so with all of this going on, the administration is also pushing out a plan to separate the leadership of this U.S. Cyber Command from the NSA, and this is according to a story in Defense One. Now, this dual hat arrangement has long been under review, but the SolarWinds crisis really seems like a strange moment to start a reorganization this intense of cybersecurity personnel. So that's kind of an oddball thing to do. And so people are wondering if this is essentially retribution against General Paul Nakasone, who runs both of these agencies. Obviously, this happened under his watch, and I'd read another article recently where a couple of weeks before this happened, or this incident happened back in March, he was actually out saying, "Oh, well, we are on it. We are good. We are totally defending, the United States, and here we are." So I think this is the boots on the ground, and like I said, I'm going to do a video on the nuts and bolts of this, but we cannot sit here and start getting divided and pointing fingers one place or the other. All available evidence, demonstrable evidence, points at one threat actor, and there's a lot of different indicators of compromise that do this. Not to mention the fact that we are not simply looking at one thing saying, oh, well, it's coming from an IP address in Russia, so it's the Russians, or something like that. There are a lot of methodology that are tried and true to understand the tactics, the techniques, the routing, the behavior, a whole bunch of different combination of points to really understand that it's one or the other, and that one is simply not being spoofed or ripped off. We know it's not the 400-pound fat guy in New Jersey, because that person is not effective enough to make themselves look like Russian intelligence, or if they do, they're making themselves look like an old bad copy of it that any top tier cybersecurity firm or intelligence agency is going to be like, oh yeah, that's the 400-pound fat guy in New Jersey. There's no way it's the Russians. So there's a lot that goes into something like this. But the last thing that we want to do is actually start pointing fingers. And when you have your entire sea of experts around you, independently all essentially confirming this, you have private corporations from Microsoft to FireEye and on, saying the same thing, that is a really good indicator of compromise. And so please, as we get into political rhetoric, and it's unfortunate that political rhetoric has to happen, let's make sure that we are assigning blame where blame is properly due, and we are not hindering our recovery process by slowing down the gears as we sit there pointing fingers at one or the other. This is a situation that needs to be assessed and remediated as fast as humanly possible and as securely as possible. And if we are sitting here basically throwing wrenches into the gears, that's not going to help anybody, especially the governments and corporations that are under threat right now from this specific hack. So by virtue of that, let's all please just be chill with each other. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.